When they're trying and trying and they're not getting it, whether it be math, science, history, English, what's our five core? English, math, science, history, foreign language, no matter what it is that they're not getting, sometimes you need to reset. The reset button? There's your word, Sandra. Reset. They say nobody's on all the time. And guess what? Everything works better sometime when you power it off and turn it back on.
Welcome to Homeschool Talks, a podcast by HSLDA. This is a show about all things homeschooling, from practical tips to inspiring stories and everything in between. This episode of Homeschool Talks features a conversation originally hosted live on our Facebook page. So if you like what you hear, be sure to follow us there for more content like this. We're so glad you've joined us today, and we hope you enjoy the program.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Kim, and I'm the Media Relations Director for Homeschool Legal Defense Association, HSLDA. Joining me today is my friend, LaNissir James, HSLDA Consultant and Homeschool Mom to 7. And she's even graduated a few, so that's amazing. Thanks for joining me today, LaNissir. I know that you'll have lots of insight and perspective to share with us.
Yes, I'm excited to be here, Sandra. This is exciting.
Well, I'm really excited to be talking about this topic. I see some of our Facebook friends are joining us now. Hi, hello, and welcome. But whether you're just thinking about homeschooling or you just need an atta-girl, mom, dad, grandma, you got this. Well, I'm here to encourage you today, and so is LaNissir. We want to tell you, you got this. My family just started homeschooling 2 years ago. I have a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. It has been a journey, and I'm excited to share with you our foibles, our successes, our failures. This is just a chance for us to tell you more about what it's really like. And LaNissir has had quite a few years of homeschooling under her belt as well. So LaNissir, as we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Sandra. I'm a wife. I'm a mom of 7. I describe myself as the author, speaker, and consultant, and the co-captain of the James Party of 11. That would be 9 adults and 2 puppies. Or I should say 9 people and 2 puppies. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm rising into the 16th year of homeschooling, and my oldest is 24. We've graduated 3 already. I can't believe it. I take my 3rd daughter to college this week.
Wow.
And we have 4 more to go. Just 4 more to go. It's exciting.
That's amazing. Well, that gives me a lot of hope. And it's just really neat. And I want to congratulate you. You've got your kids in college. They have flown the coop. They have done so many interesting things. And we're definitely going to be talking a little bit more about that. We're excited to talk about this topic and also hopefully to answer a few of the questions that you have. But, let's go ahead and talk about how homeschooling provides the freedom for your child to pursue what they are curious about. Kids naturally love to learn. And how can you keep that going in homeschooling?
Well, I think the way you keep it going is to first know what it is. I think sometimes as parents, we just have to slow down, smile, look your kid in the eye, and ask them that question, what do you love doing? And, it's exciting in homeschooling that you can set your life at a pace where you can get those answers. If you're talking to an introverted child, it may take a while for them to respond. An extroverted child will tell you right away and begin to pursue some of those interests, even if they're not academic. I think that's the thing, Sandra, we have to talk about. It starts with, hey, I love to, play outdoors. And what does that become? It became my environmental science student who's in college right now as a rising junior in Dean's List. Who knows what it turns into? But I think that when kids love to learn, things open up for them. It's exciting. And it also fosters a lifelong learning kind of attitude about education. So that's exciting.
I agree. And that's just such a different mentality, even for me, because, even for me, I remember as a kid, I used to learn to the test, right? So I used to memorize those facts, remember them for the test, get them right, and then just let it go. And it's so different in homeschooling. In our family, we're learning something and there's a book that we're reading together, and then that relates to a history lesson that we might be following, that relates to a video, that relates to a book. And so I feel like there's a lot more, it stays with you and it becomes a part of you. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And I love how you kind of have this web that kind of winds through all aspects of your life on the subject. And that's exciting.
I agree. That's, it's a good spider web. So that's another thing. How do you go about modeling a curiosity growth mindset? So I know we had talked about this a little bit before. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah. So, one, just really helping kids come out of what you were saying. You kind of learn a test, the information, you get it right or wrong. But instead, you set up atmosphere where kids can kind of fail forward to success, and that they don't always have to have the answer. They don't always have to be right. You teach a lot of humility in the midst of it all, and just say, you know what? We're failing forward. These experiences will help us know more. I remember when my son, he didn't really want to do a whole lot with history, but then I took him down to the Washington Monument, and he learned about the Junior Ranger program and how he could get this badge just for learning, right? Just for experiencing what learning is all about. And along the way, he fell in love with learning about the monuments. And so that's kind of how it happens. Just, it's very, very organic, and it can be very exciting for kids if they get a chance to experience that excitement about learning. And not without having that, I'm going to get the answer wrong, because that kind of closes kids up. They won't share at all.
I agree. And it's not about having the right answer or unanswer. It's about the exploration process. So I would almost say that learning is a process. And so, going through it, it's not whether or not the experiment was successful per se, but it's about going through the steps of the experiment to learn something. So,
Yes.
and then it also kind of takes the pressure off, right? A little bit. I mean, for me, it really did. So, we've always done the Junior Ranger badges. We've always been in the Washington, D.C. area. So I've taken my kids all over this area, the DMV, Pennsylvania, and, it becomes a part of them. They remember climbing, up on the hill in Gettysburg and seeing the cannons and seeing, parts of the fences and having those kind of remembrances, not just a book, an answer in a classroom setting. Which we do spend some time. So that's another thing that I want to kind of go to is, what does it mean to learn to mastery?
Repetition. We're RVers, so we're out and about, and I love to create opportunities for repetition. I remember teaching one of the children, she was struggling through some division. And I was like, you haven't mastered that multiplication. Let's go back. And she's like, I can't go back. I said, sure, you can. You can go back. It doesn't matter. You're not behind. When people say they're behind, I say, behind who? And so, we were able to step back, breathe a little, really master the multiplication so that when the division got started, it really, really kicked in. And so a lot of repetition is important. And I love what you were saying about having different opportunities to connect with children. I love having some homeschool stuff in the RV, some homeschool stuff at home. Even if you're a real homeschooler, you may have homeschool stuff in your purse, right? Some manipulatives, right? Just
absolutely.
That will help you remember that the repetition helps you move towards mastery. And that's exciting. I think that when a kid thinks that they have to be one and done, that creates a lot of stress. I think that being able to know that maybe while you're struggling counting money on paper, that there will be an opportunity for you to have live money in the grocery store with mom later. So that's exciting. And that's my strategy to helping them stay positive about learning.
Well, I mean, for us, learning to mastery, they didn't have to keep up with the class. So if the class was going too slow, they were getting bored. And if the class was going too fast, they would have to skip over things and just kind of catch up because this is what they're doing this week. This is what they're doing next week. And so, a test would come home 2 weeks later. I would look at it and say, oh, my goodness, you don't understand what place value is. But I didn't know that for 2 weeks. Here, I'm able to walk them step by step. And if they're not getting it, or if they're not ready to approach that concept yet, then we can take a break, or we can take as long as it takes to get to that step. And so for my daughter, who started in second grade and she considered herself very timid about math, now she says, I'm a math genius because she has her math facts down. She has her foundational skills, and now she feels really comfortable doing the math and then getting the answers correct. And in math, you do need to have correct answers for sure.
Yes. And I think kids pick up the vibe from their parents too. So if we're positive about it as parents, the kids are positive. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. I love what you said. I'm a math whiz. That's exciting. And that goes to show that you're saying positive things about her moving forward to grasp concepts that perhaps she didn't have at another time. I always love to tell the story about the pizza that came in the house. And prior to that, we were working on fractions. And one of my little boys, he was saying, oh, I can't get it. I don't understand why a half is bigger than a fourth. Because, 4 is bigger than 2. Well, when the pizza came, I told the guy, double cut the pizza. And so I said, do you want half of this pizza or a fourth? For then he was forever the wizard when it came down to the fractions. And so sometimes if you just switch the pendulum a little bit, right, have a paradigm switch, kids will get things that maybe they didn't get at the time you were trying to teach them. And that's okay. And if you have a good attitude about it, they'll be willing to try it again without the fear of failing.
Absolutely. And I mean, I want to pick up on that. It's all about, it's okay to fail. And so they're in a safe space to fail. And so I feel like sometimes, they haven't had that before. And so being able to try things out or get things wrong or take a long time really gives them the expansiveness in their mind to really, go for it, the different goals that they may have.
Yes. And failure is the only road to success. Success is a series of failures over and over again. I've failed forward in my homeschooling, and I'm much better than I was 16 years ago, but it was because I capitalized on those mistakes, right? You're thinking,
right.
Oh, well, don't do that anymore. And of course, my poor firstborn, right? You practice on that kid, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't have anybody else to practice on but the firstborn.
Well, that's what I was saying. Your last one is going to be the smartest one because she gets, all the iterations. So she gets the 7th iteration or the 9th iteration. So, you've definitely got it now. So how do you figure out what your kids' strengths are? Like a lot of these folks have never been, in that teaching mode, even though you are your child's first teacher. This is the first time that they've sat down and said, okay, let's talk about this quarter of this pizza, and how do you figure out what their strengths are? I guess that's first part of the question. And then how do you go about teaching to those strengths?
Yeah, those are great questions, Sandra. So of course I have a little advantage in that I know a lot about personality types using the Myers-Briggs. And I realize that many people don't have the access, but I know the difference between a kid who's an introvert versus an extrovert, right? You have your kids, you're gathering them up at the kitchen table. You want to teach them homeschooling, but that's that introverted child who says, I'd rather read a book by myself. And you think it's something wrong, and it's not. But one of the things that I advise parents to do is to take a journal. Take a journal, because there's no two kids alike of your child. Because if you will listen in, if you will lean in, if you slow down and pay attention, you can take some notes and say, I noticed that, Johnny is a little bit more crabby in the morning, right? Well, that's a clue. He's not a morning person, right? Or maybe he needs to get better, to get to sleep earlier at night. You want to, you think that, the faintest ink is better than the fondest memory, right? So you have to write things down. And if you're like me, you have multiple kids, you want to write down clues, because life gives you clues, and kids will show you who they are by a lot of repetition. You'll begin to see, hey, I noticed that when we went on a field trip, my son was way more excited. He seemed more energetic. He seemed more happier. And so those are the kind of notes that you want to take, so that as you're creating opportunities to learn, you include those things, so that that you're creating delight in education, and you're igniting their ability to want to learn more, because you're, of course, sandwiching it with the things they love to do. I'll give you an example. Right out back, I have a gazebo. Okay. And I do have kids who love learning outside. Well, I'm not always in the business of wanting to go outside, but I've learned that if I will just take one lesson in the kitchen and one lesson out, outside, I have a
Right.
completely different kid as opposed to if I kept him in the whole time doing school all day.
Right. I'm all about outside when there aren't mosquitoes. So I am with you. Um, For
Yeah.
me, I'm like a mosquito magnet, so I'm kind of like, it's nice outside, but if there's a mosquito, it's gonna bite me. So I really like the cool of early fall when it's like nice and cool, but the mosquitoes are dead. And so we do that too. We go out on our deck and we have nice little sitting area. We have an eating table. So when the weather's nice, we definitely do that. And it's just changing it up. Even if you're just
Yes.
changing your environment, going to the
Yes.
library, that
Yes.
has been a total, you know what I mean? It's just taking that moment to switch it up a tiny bit really
Yeah.
has helped my kids as well.
Absolutely.
So this is a big one, LaNissir. I am so excited for you to talk about this. What have you done for your kids to connect learning and real life? And
Oh,
I
yeah.
just, there's so many different ones, but I really specifically want to hear about just all the cool building that you're doing and just all the training that you're doing with that. It's like I see the pictures and I'm really blown away.
Oh, we're having a good time. That's the most important thing. I hope that message comes across. We have unscripted comedy because it's not always perfect, you know. So we are right now restoring our my mother-in-law and my father-in-law's beach house, and so my son, my oldest son, is getting construction management credit, and he's
Mm,
really learning to work with his hands. And that started in a woodwork class that we did in co-op that kind of didn't go so well, right? There's that
right.
failing forward to success,
Mm,
to turning into him, redoing the steps and redoing the deck, and they're laying the floor. And I'm watching, of course, all under my husband's direction, but I'm watching him and his sisters and his sibling get along and work on a project that they're able to enjoy. So one of the rooms is done already, and I just saw them, doing rock, paper, scissors as to whose room it was going to be. It's hilarious, but they're learning a lot. I told my son, I said, you're going to be the builder. You're going to be the builder of the family. He's, going to college and in business, international business, but he can still learn to do the things that he loves doing. My husband, prior to him going into his career, he was an auto mechanic. And so he's taught my son and the daughters, how to change the oil. He knows how to change the brakes, the tires. I mean, he can keep a car running. But those are the kinds of skills that you can pass along. And I love to go a step further, that if it's something they're passionate about and they want to put some hours into it, it even could be a half credit of an elective or maybe in a full credit, depending on how much time you put into it. So I love doing that. And we have a lot of that going on. We're even in the process now of writing our own history book. It's exciting. I call it live history. So telling their own story. And the kids are really excited about it. And I love how family members get a chance to share about knowing our grandmother and our great grandmother and our grandfather, and all those stories go in the book because it's part of the learning process. So we're just having a really, really good time. And don't forget the simple trip to the grocery store, shop in the outer perimeters of the grocery store. I give my teens the money for the grocery so they learn how to budget. And guess what? They could come back with all that junk food if they want, then nobody can eat. And so again, they'll fail forward to success. They've made some mistakes. Now they know how to go to the store and they're like, listen, we got to get our fruits, our vegetables, our dairies, our meats. And I love just to see how they've learned how to do some things that I know that if we were not homeschooling, we wouldn't have time, right? You just kind of do it and you go. You don't allow the kid to experience it because you're in such a rush. But if you're not, you can have them really teach them some skills that they might need later in their lives.
agreed. And I homeschooling is basically learning in your life. So it doesn't end in the classroom. It just keeps going. So I think that's what you're saying when you're saying, you're going to the grocery store or whatever. I'll take my 8-year-old. He's very uninterested in any kind of shopping. But I'll take him to the grocery store and I say, hey, bud, I want you to compare these two mustard prices. This one's $132 and this one's $306. And
Right.
he's like, well, this one you save this much money. So he's doing math and we'll get home and I'll say, okay. And he's like, well, don't I have to do math now? And I was like, no, you did it. You just did it. Or we'll do the running tally, right? So we'll say, hey, let's see who gets closest to the bill. And so, the two are very competitive. They're 10 and 8. And so we'll keep a running track. We'll keep a running track of how much things cost. Okay, now we're at $12. Okay, we want to get cheese. Well, I want to get 2 because it's 2 for $6, 1 for, 4, whatever. And so they don't even know that they're learning. They just,
Right.
it's happening. They think it's a game.
Right.
And so
Yes.
that's one of the that's one of the things where I just felt guilty all the time because I thought I had to like sit there at the table and like be turning pages and checking off marks. And what, a very wise person, and it probably might have been you, told me was like, no, come on, Sandra, like you're already doing it. Why are you trying to make a double thing? Like you're already at the grocery store. And then you can also say, hey, I only have $100. And so I need fruit, I need vegetables, I need
Yep.
cheese, and then I need some other things. Can you guys help me figure this out?
Yes.
And they have done that, where I've given them, a certain amount of money and say, I need you guys to figure this into dinner for our family. And mommy wants leftovers. And so
Yes.
they've done that, where they bought, a chicken pack, and then they'll discuss it and then realize like, oh, we could have bought this one, which was cheaper, or this one, which was on sale.
Critical thinking. That's what it is. Learning critical thinking. I love that.
And I didn't even know what the words to put to it is. It sounds cool now. What were you doing? Oh, we were doing critical thinking. That's what we were doing. You know what I mean? I didn't know what we were doing. I'm just like, we got to get this stuff done. But
Right.
I guess in my short time of homeschooling, what I realized was incorporating life into our homeschool means that we are not always at the table. And we are at the table, of course. We do have to do things sitting down and thoughtfully. But a lot of this happens, outside of our lives, or, one of our cars broke down. This one's breaking down too. But one of the things was like, hey, we need to get a car. But instead of making a process just between my husband and I had my kids look. I said, hey, let's look for a car. I want it to be under 60,000 miles. I want it to be these kind of brands, and then they had fun looking. Hey, Mom, what about this one? About this one?
Yeah.
And so all of these are not just skills that you can check off a box, but they check off the box for life skills, critical thinking, like you said, and also just that covers math, that covers so many different things. And I didn't understand that because I wanted everything to be in a thing like this is history and this is writing and this is math. And what I have learned is that, the joy is really in the fact that you get to be learning all the time and that you're teaching your children that love of learning, which I really didn't understand for the first 18 months where I was like, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, but then now that I'm doing it, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because my kids are doing it. And in that they're finding joy.
I love that. And you know what? You mentioned something that I want to just highlight, knowing the names of what to call it. I think that sometimes that's the pressure in igniting education because people will say, is this homeschooling? Is this homeschooling? The kids used to go and spend some time with their great grandmother and they would just be sitting down. We call it sit down. And so they would just go sit down and they're like, is this school? Shouldn't they be in school? I said, well, this is history. Or, my other daughter, she's planting some strawberries, outside of her playhouse, and they're like, is this homeschooling? I say, oh yeah, that's botany. And, then we're restoring, one of our properties and we're painting the fence to it. And someone says, is this homeschooling? Yeah, it's art. And I think that's the thing, being able to give it some titles, if you will, that helps you in the process to kind of relax into it. Like you said, I didn't get the paper and pencil out today, but we certainly had hands-on. Guess what that turns into? Later in life, we call those internships, apprenticeships. That's really what they are. And wouldn't you agree that the best laid educational process is when you get a chance to study abroad, intern, apprentice with someone? It goes beyond the classroom. And that's really what homeschooling allows us to do.
Yes. And I love what Manda said. Homeschooling can become overwhelming at times. And I understand now that sometimes it's okay to relax and it's okay to watch a movie, or, do something. So our first year, my kids told me every single day, that's not the way my teacher did it. Every day they said that to me. And, I just try to make learning fun and interesting. But, there just would be those days where I'm like, okay, we're done. We are closing our books now. And we are going to, go for a drive, or we're going to go to the park and we're going to walk around. And we need to reset, and the kids need to reset. I need to reset. And I'm like, okay, we're done. And they're like, what do you mean I'm not done? I have pages 51 to 55 to do. Then I got to read. Then I got to, you know what I mean? They wanted to do the boxes. And I said, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to learn a song, well, why don't you show me that piece that you're working on the piano? And they're like, why? That's not school. They like completely freak out. It's not the schedule. But
Right.
I guess I just want to encourage people, and I'm sure you have done this too, where it's okay to have the day, right? There are teacher work days, whatever mental health days. Like
Yes.
let's take them and let's celebrate it. Why
Yes.
not? Like
Yes.
this is homeschooling and it's life. So
Right.
not every single day of life goes just exactly how you planned it, but
Exactly.
sometimes, like you said, someone's gardening or, for us, we found it was a monarch butterfly. What is the thing? The chrysalis. And it was in our little garden plot on our deck, just one chrysalis. And so I was like, we're doing this right now because the monarch butterfly is coming through, you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
it hatched and it was a butterfly and then it needed sugar water, but that was not on
Right.
my plan. That was not on my plan. We were not doing any butterfly unit study,
That's
but
all right.
it was in our face. And so I
Yeah.
was like, why not? And
Yeah.
that's what my kids remember. They don't remember page 55 of, remember that section when we're doing the move the decimal point over? They
No.
weren't excited about that.
Right. I love
But
that.
this
And you
goes
know
to
what? We have to remember too, we're homeschooling, not
Mm,
school at home, right? So we're
right.
homeschooling. And so, here I take that exact scenario that you had with the butterfly. And guess what? Maybe tomorrow you find a unit study on to learn more about it. And so that's an opportunity to add a little bonus science to your homeschool curriculum, right? And so it's exciting to just kind of take what they're organically learning and expand upon it. We just came from Dallas. We RV'd to Dallas, Texas, and we were
You
going
go,
through the
girl.
state.
It's hot in Dallas.
It was hot. Yes, we were talking about how hot it was. Okay, it wasn't as hot as Arizona, but it was definitely hot. But we were able to go back and do some history. Now, keep in mind, we didn't prepare the lesson before we left, but when we
Mm,
came back, we were like, okay, what's the history in Texas? What's the history in Arkansas? What's the history in Tennessee? How about Virginia? And oh my gosh, what did we miss about Maryland? And so it really can be an opportunity that even if you didn't plan it out, I guess that's my point, you can follow up with it, right? And it will enhance your education as well. I mean,
See, you're giving me the words right here. You can follow up
yeah,
because sometimes I always think, oh, I failed. Because for me, I my the tape in my head is always like, oh, I'm not doing this right. But what I
right.
realize now in knowing more homeschooling families and parents and kids that I find delightful and successful, it wasn't necessarily planned. So I love what you said. Like you didn't necessarily have this plan, but you're like, hey, we went through these states. Let's follow up. So I
Yeah.
need that word too. Like, hey, we went, this is what we're going to do. This makes sense to us. We're going to follow up with that. And why don't
Yes.
we explore that a little bit more?
Yes. Yes. And that's what
So,
delight in learning is. That's what loving education is all about. That's what igniting children's, love for education is all about. Just, they can receive what you're putting in front of them in paper when they saw it live. I think that matters. So that's exciting.
so, okay. So this does happen. There are times where you are trying and they are not getting it or they do not want to do it. I've had this experience, but you've done this a few more times. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that, LaNissir.
When they're trying and they're not getting it, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
math, science, history, English, what's our 5 core? English, math, science, history, foreign language, no matter what it is that they're
Okay.
not getting, sometimes you need to reset. The
Reset.
reset button? There's your word, Sandra. Reset. They say nobody's on all the time. And guess what? Everything works better sometime when you power it off and turn it back on. And that's a concept sometimes when if you're having one of those days where just everything is just not going right, power it off and come back on. And guess what? There's power in naps. I'm the type of person that I'm afraid to miss something. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I love to,
Mhm.
optimize my day. But
Are
sometimes
you
you're
a
so
FOMO? Because I'm a FOMO with curriculum. I'm like, what are they doing? I've never heard of Mequon math. I want to know about that. I don't really want to know anymore, but
But sometimes you need a power nap, Sandra, and so that you can better, execute what it is that you're trying to do. And also pay attention to your peak times. Every person, every individual, whether they're a baby or they're grown, 100 years old, people have peak times in their day. So sometimes when things are just not going well, I bet you there's some sort of pattern. There may be things going on in the house where everybody's cranky or, things are just not on schedule. Folks are
Right.
crying. And listen, I've homeschooled with a lot of little babies. I was either pregnant, nursing, or about to be pregnant again. There you go. That was almost 20 years of my life. And so I've learned to lean in and laugh to keep from crying sometimes because things are not going to go perfect. And I will tell
No.
you, I am the person that likes things in order.
Mhm.
God has a sense of humor because then he'll give you a lot of people. So it's never in order. So
Right.
I have to spend time just breathing, relaxing, and enjoying the fact that we're home in our home all day. It's going to be messy. I just want to remind you, moms and dads, it's going to be messy, right? Because would you agree, Sandra, when you were out of the house all day, right?
Oh, oh man, my house was
Things were
so
clean,
clean. It was so
clean,
clean, it smelled good. Now it smells like
silky food.
mulch and dirt. My son, for some reason, he thinks he's the basketball player. So everywhere he goes, he jumps up and he puts his dirty basketball hand on my ceiling, on the trim,
Mm,
on every
door.
door walkthrough. And I try to remind myself, I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss this. I'm not missing this. Teddy, if you do that one more time, but at the same time, you know what I mean? It's like a friend of mine came over and she said, your home is so delightful and warm. There's books in every corner. There's, you know what I mean? There's like this warm feeling. And I was like, you mean the dust bunnies in every corner? Do you mean that mulch that I see on our front rug? Like, so people, it's the way that you frame it.
Yes,
And what I realized was that if I'm not feeling delightful,
yeah,
neither are my kids, because
that's
the
right.
atmosphere that I'm breathing out is the one that my children are absorbing. And so,
Yes,
like you said, LaNissir, which is so wise, go have those frustration moments alone. You know what I mean?
yes,
Or take your
yes,
deep breath and then come back out and be the one that's modeling that behavior, that excitement about
yes.
counting money or whatever, which they never really see money. So we're playing with some play money and they're like, I don't know what the point of this is, mom. Like, where's your money? I was like, well, there is money and these are pennies and these are nickels and
Right,
dimes.
right.
But I mean, it's one of those important to know. And even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it makes sense.
Right. And
Uh,
sometimes you just have to spend a couple of extra minutes in the bathroom. And I always tell people that if you have a whole lot of kids, if you keep the light off, they'll take an extra 5 minutes to find you. And now
oh,
you've built in free time. There you go. Okay. So, and again, there's some days where they're seeing how you deal with pain. I mean, we had a major tragedy. We lost family members and they've seen mom and dad cry. But guess what? That's training too. So every day is not going to be blue skies. They also watch how you handle disappointments and how you handle failure and
oh, they
how
watch
you,
everything.
oh my
They watch
gosh.
everything.
Listen, my dad used to say, because I could never get the kids to stay on their sleep schedule. And he said it best. He says, hon, he said, you are so interesting. Your kids are afraid to fall asleep because they might miss something. And I thought, okay, okay. But you think about that, they're curious. But guess what? When I was in traditional school, of course, I was in a public school, I never knew my mother as well. And it wasn't that she didn't love me, it's just that she was working and I was in school. And, the time that we saw each other was very limited, right? Or it was in the midst of, she's got homework, dinner has to be done, folks got to get into bed. So it wasn't that quality time. I really think my children have really got a chance to know us these past 16 years of homeschooling. And it's great. In fact, I've caught them mimicking me. That's hilarious, right? You know?
Oh, my daughter does a deadpan and it's not pretty. I'm like, ooh, is that what I sound like? And she's like, she can mimic me and my husband perfectly.
Yes.
It's a little frightening. Not in a terrible way, but because they have been with us,
Yes.
and because they know us. But
Yes.
that's another thing. A lot of times, as a full-time working parent, I always feel guilty that I could be doing more. I could be spending more time and things like that. And you were one of the first people that reminded me, hey, Sandra, they are watching you. They're watching
Yes.
you work. They're watching
Yes.
you on the webinars. They're watching you type. They're watching you read over your stuff. I'll ask them to read it. Like, hey, I just wrote this. Can you take a look and read it?
Yes.
And these are all things they're learning from that. Why am
Yes.
I discounting what I do? I don't know why I did that, because
Right.
I don't
I
need
mean,
to do
that's
that.
teaching work ethic. I mean, come on. You learn your work ethic from your parents. I mean, this is great. I mean, it's kind of how America used to be, right? They would be working on the farm, right? Whether you had a good day or a bad day, you had to go milk the cow. And so,
Right.
that whole work ethic is priceless. So my kids see me work, they see me move, they see how I handle, they see how I meet deadlines. And guess what? They grow up, they become college students, adults, and they too can do the same. So, the speed of the leader is the speed of the game.
Speed of the leader. Well, I must be speeding along just fine. So we talked a little bit about this. Another idea is to take it outside. LaNissir, you are a pro on taking it outside. I want to hear a little bit more about the traveling and learning. What about Taylor Beach? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I want to give you hope that teens are always not as excited about being outside. You almost just like you'd have to sell your family on, the new living room set that you thought that you loved and they hate or whatever. You have to
Hmm.
sell them on the outdoor time. So I've had to be extremely creative. We're restoring a property that had nothing on it, just beach and grass. So we had to cut the grass. You gotta love it. So how do you convince a bunch of teens to get together and go cut the grass? I mean, really, they're like, oh, this is more work. But you can do fun things. So I got a grill. And so we had a person who was the grill master. Oh, and so we would stop and get the groceries, and then we have grills. Then we would have a cooler, and of course, filled with ice, their favorite drinks inside, water, of course. And so then it became, wow, well, we're cutting the grass, and now we have a meal. And then we got a playhouse for them. Like it's literally a shed that they keep their kayaks in and their bikes in. And now you set the atmosphere. And I heard you say that, Sandra. You set the atmosphere so that kids can be excited about it. And along the way, that project has extended to us restoring, our mother-in-law's, father-in-law's beach house and the construction management, but it didn't start easy. I mean, you can't get a bunch of kids to say, hey, let's go sit outside in the hot sun. Right? That
Right.
doesn't go well. So you have to get strategic. And we have a lot of cool things like you name it. Let me tell you the culmination. My daughter, who's a volleyball player, she's going to be playing club volleyball at her university. And we got a big, official volleyball set.
Wow.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Put it up at our family picnic, and it was the hit of the weekend because why? Everybody got a chance to play volleyball. But what I noticed that the teens who normally don't have the opportunity to get engaged were engaged. Now, I have a lot of fun with my 6-year-old. I think you can pull out kinetic sand and Play-Doh. And I even got some mason jars. Okay.
Okay.
Y'all remember the mason jars to collect what?
Oh, I love those.
Fireflies, right?
Mhm.
And so when it got dark, I wanted the kids not to be afraid. So then you had to have things to do when it gets dark. So fireflies was exciting. And don't forget about the campfire. Yes, the little tumbleweeds because we couldn't get the logs, to catch. And so, so we're known now. And don't forget about your s'mores. Don't forget about your graham crackers.
Right.
So
And if you don't have access to all that, you can do it in the microwave. You can do it on the
yeah,
stovetop. You can go
yeah,
camping inside your
you
living
can
room.
do
Or
it
if you're
in your
like me,
backyard. Yeah,
yeah, yes, or you can camp out in your living room. I think
yeah,
that's so awesome. But you're showing the joy and the deliciousness. So it's like enjoying the sights, the smells, the enjoying all the different aspects of it. And so, a lot of times when my kids are learning, they're like, this is so fun. And I'm like, yes, it is. But they don't even know at that moment, like that they're learning.
yes,
And so you're talking about taking it outside. And I think, the one thing to mention that I didn't do, because my first year, I was like, we got to stay on track and we've got to get to the end of this book. And I just was all about getting somewhere. And it didn't matter whether everybody was crying and, gnashing their teeth. I was like, we're doing this next thing. And
right.
it doesn't have to be that way. And so I guess if there's any piece that I can say from a new homeschooler's perspective is that if it hurts, don't do it that way. Pivot.
Right.
Pivot. You just take one step in a different direction. Or, I don't care that you spent $49.95 on that book of math. It is not working. Put it aside. It may work for a friend of yours, or you could sell it, or you could donate it. But there's no need to be like, just because you spend that money, now you have to suffer for the whole year.
Right.
There's lots of free curriculum. Hopefully at this point you have made a homeschool friend or two that you could say, hey, our math is not working. Can I look at your math? Because that's how you're really going to get to where you need to be, as opposed to where you were, or, you know what I mean? There's no need to make a square peg try to go into a round hole. If it's not working, it's not working. It's okay. Put it aside. Just be like, I bought it. It didn't work. It was pretty. And now I'm going to try something else.
Right.
And that's
also
not failure.
That's not failure. And sometimes when you have to push through things, you have to find the silver lining in it. I also wanted my kids to be strong finishers. They are sports kids. And so, helping them cross the finish line was big for me. So a lot of times when we make a bad choice, we're like, okay, so what did we learn? Or how can we finish this? Or how can we be faithful and true to what we decided to do? And yet learn the lesson and make our pivot, so all of that, Sandra, is so important.
I've learned a lot, haven't I, LaNissir?
You've come a long way, my friend.
Right. I guess, the one thing I want to leave as a takeaway is, just like anything else, that's a change. Change is hard, for good or bad. Right. And so, even though you may feel uncertain, just embrace this moment. Embrace this moment in your homeschooling journey. It might be hard because you're just starting out the new year, or, kids are coming off of a different pace of life, right? Because I'm telling my kids right now, like, hello, the 10:30 p.m. sleeping time is ending. And they are having a hard time going to bed because, our homeschool skews earlier because of my schedule. And so, change can be hard, but change is good. And it, just takes a little bit of routine to get there. Yes. And I mean, you keep things up, which is so cool. Even in your travels, you're constantly learning. There's no end or beginning of learning. It just keeps going.
Yes. And I guess my takeaway to everyone would be, get yourself a journal. In fact, I have one here. I keep them. And take some notes. Take some notes on what's delightful in your homeschooling. What's delightful in the things like, I love summer. And so there was a time where I was like, oh, fall is coming, but there's so many delightful things about fall. And then I thought, well, you know what? It's technically one more month of summer left. So what can we do to start school off and acknowledge the fact that summer is still here? So we're starting kayaking, we're starting all kinds of things that are summer related, because why? We have 20 more days to do it, or one more month to do it. And so if you get a list of those things, then you can take a day and delight, maybe one day a week. Hey, you can still go to the beach, even though school starts, you can still take a beach trip if the weather is allowing you to be at the beach, right?
Agreed. It doesn't have to go in this certain order. Or, one of the really delightful things and a money save as a homeschooler is that you can go on vacation after the appointed vacation time. And so, we are waiting to do a long weekend. It's still going to be nice in September and October. So we're hoping to get away, and the beach prices drop by more than half. And so that makes it very affordable for us to do that. And it gives us a slow start. LaNissir, I just want to thank you so much for you taking your time to share your story and to share just all the wonderful tips. And, the takeaway, right? Isn't the greatest gift that you have these bonds and memories with your children that are in college, right?
Yes. Precious.
And that's something that you can't buy.
Right. Yeah. My BKA, better known as name, is Joyful Mother of Children. And I really have enjoyed every single good, bad, and ugly to being a mom of many. And they're so precious. All these memories, go out and make memories, the good, the bad, and the ugly is exciting.
Wait, hold on. What is the acronym?
Better known as.
Oh, better known as. Okay. Yes. So yes, I'm a mom of some. I have 3, some, But, same thing. Like, I'm treasuring all this time because, they will only be these ages for this season, and then they're going to move to the next age and to the next size. And I
Yes.
know it in my shoe buying because I'm like, I just bought you those shoes.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I just want to thank you so much for joining me again, LaNissir. I'm sure we'll be chatting again. This has been a wonderful conversation. And for those of you watching and thinking about homeschooling or have decided to homeschool, we hope that this was a boost and that you have some good takeaways for your homeschool. And for those of you who are already on this journey with us, I know that you're relating to a lot of things that what we talked about. You can find us here at hslda.org. And for those of you starting, you can go to hslda.org/get started. In addition to our website resources, I also want to let you know that HSLDA members have access to a great legal team and educational consultants to help you answer questions you have about teaching your kids at home and having fun while you're doing it. We have educational consultants who specialize in helping member parents who have questions about homeschooling. You might have a child with learning differences who have dealt with bullying or other issues in a traditional school. HSLDA educational consultants are also homeschool moms, and they specialize in pre-K through high school, and they're ready to help you tackle all of your challenges, whether it's finding a math curriculum, click for your child, or making a 4-year plan for high school. So we're here to help. You go to hslda.org/join. And so we'll see you, I think, next week. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Happy homeschooling.
Happy homeschooling. Bye.
Bye.
Today's program is made possible by Mom Possible. Step into this engaging, interactive space for practical support from moms who are right there with you in the day-to-day of homeschooling. You can browse our library of tips and resources, see how other parents are answering common questions about homeschooling, or join our mentoring group for deeper community support. Get started at mompossible.org. That's mompossible.org. Thanks for listening to this episode of Homeschool Talks. If you've enjoyed this conversation, will you do us a favor by sharing it with a friend or leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts? As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode along with our other Homeschool Talks conversations at hslda.org/podcast. And if you want to be the first to know about new episodes, as well as upcoming guests and topics, you can sign up for our email list using the link in the show notes. That's all for now. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we'll see you next time.